Fear is the enemy of progress. Fear is the enemy of progress. Fear is the enemy of progress. It whispers in your mind, convincing you to play small, to delay, to wait for the right time that never comes. Understand this now. Fear is the enemy of progress. It is not a companion. It is not a guide. It is a liar. And if you listen to it, it will steal your future one silent moment at a time. Every dream you've ever had, every vision that sparked fire in your spirit was immediately met with a shadow. That shadow is fear. It stands guard at the gates of achievement. Why? Because progress demands a price. It demands courage. And courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means you take the next step anyway. You act in defiance of fear, not in negotiation with it. The most dangerous thing about fear is that it feels logical. It cloaks itself in reason, dressing up its cowardice as caution. It tells you to wait until you're ready to gather more information, to play it safe, and people believe it. They follow that voice right into mediocrity. But the truth is, you were never meant to play it safe. You were meant to build, to create, to grow. Progress is the natural state of the bold. You will never conquer new ground while clinging to comfort. Growth begins the moment you step outside what is familiar. But that's exactly where fear starts shouting the loudest. It wants you to believe that discomfort equals danger, that risk equals ruin. But if you pause and examine it, you'll see fear has no substance. It is smoke with no fire. You walk through it and realize it never had the power to stop you, only to distract you. Progress requires decision. Indecision is fear in disguise. When you hesitate, you give fear a seat at the table. You don't need every answer to move. You don't need a perfect plan. What you need is resolve. Decide, then act. That simple rhythm, decide, then act, will break fear's back. The mind loves motion. It hates being trapped. But fear traps action freeze. You cannot become the person you're meant to be while obeying the fears of the person you used to be. That version of you, the hesitant one, the doubter, the excuse maker, must die for the new one to rise. That is the transaction. The price of growth is the death of fear-fed identity. Most won't pay it, but you will, because you've seen what happens when fear wins. Nothing. The ones who rise in this world are not fearless. They are defiant. They look fear in the eye and move forward anyway. They feel the tremble in their chest and take the leap regardless. Why? Because their purpose is stronger than their panic. Their mission is louder than their doubts. Fear loses its voice when you stop listening. So cut it off. Starve it. Ignore its pleas. Burn the bridge behind you, so there's no way back to comfort. Make no mistake, fear will return. It always does. But every time it shows its face, it becomes smaller if you face it. The man or woman who refuses to bow to fear becomes unstoppable. Their progress is inevitable because their spirit cannot be held. And progress, true progress, belongs only to the brave. Now ask yourself, what has fear stolen from you? What idea went unspoken? What move went unmade? What life are you missing because you listened to that liar? The clock is still ticking. Fear may have delayed you, but it hasn't defeated you unless you let it. So don't stand now. Move now. Speak now. Act now. Because the road to greatness is paved by those who had every reason to freeze but ran forward anyway. Fear paralyzes action. Progress demands movement. When fear enters the mind, it halts momentum. It causes hesitation, doubt, and overthinking. What should be a step forward becomes a standstill. It convinces you to question what you already know you must do. It wraps itself around your decisions and poisons your instincts. The longer you listen, the more convincing it becomes. The moment you freeze, fear grows stronger. But movement is power. Movement is clarity. Even if the step is small, even if the path isn't fully visible, movement destroys the illusion fear creates. There is no progress without motion. Ideas mean nothing without action. Potential is wasted without execution. Progress lives in motion. Those who win are not always the smartest or the most talented. They are simply those who move while others hesitate. They act while others plan. They commit while others debate. The difference between a vision fulfilled and a vision forgotten is the willingness to move through fear instead of sitting with it. Fear thrives in stillness. It multiplies in silence. The longer you sit with fear, the more roots it grows. It starts small, a thought, a worry, a what if, but it spreads fast. Soon it builds walls around your ambition. You look around and all you see are reasons not to act. But those reasons are built on illusions. Fear cannot exist where there is relentless movement. It cannot catch up to someone who refuses to stop. The antidote to fear is not comfort. It is motion. Do something. Anything. Build the habit of decisive action. Every time you move forward, no matter how small the step, you reclaim power. You reclaim control. You train your mind to obey your will, not your worry. That's how momentum begins. That's how greatness begins. Not in bursts of genius, but in bold action repeated daily. Despite the presence of fear, There will never be a time when fear completely vanishes. It is part of the human experience, but it is not meant to be your master. It is a signal, not a stop sign. Feel it but do not follow it. Use it but never bow to it. Use it but never bow to it. Fear signals that growth is near, that discomfort is present, that risk is real. But growth requires discomfort, and risk is the price of transformation. The ones who achieve extraordinary things are not those who feel no fear, but those who do not allow fear to dictate their decisions. They move anyway. They speak anyway. They try anyway because they understand the simple truth. Fear cannot stop what it cannot catch, and it cannot catch the one who is in motion. Fear will always give you a reason to delay. It will always find something that's not quite ready. It will always whisper not yet, but not yet is a lie. It's a stall tactic, a slow death to your purpose. Those who wait for perfect conditions are often left with a perfect excuse. You do not need perfection to begin. You need movement. You need the courage to start with what you have. You need to act with what you know now, not with what you might know later. Progress does not come to the prepared. It comes to the active. Those who make moves while others make excuses. Those who take risks while others take notes. Fear hates the decisive. It despises those who move in spite of it, and that is exactly who you must become. There is no safety in stillness, only the illusion of safety. The cost of standing still is far greater than the cost of failure. At least failure brings feedback. At least failure brings growth. At least failure proves you tried. But fear wants you to believe that doing nothing is better than doing something wrong. It wants you to believe that avoiding risk is protecting you. But in truth, it is robbing you. It robs you of experience, of progress, of the chance to become more than you are now. It tricks you into thinking that survival is success. But survival is not the goal. Advancement is, elevation is, expansion is, and none of those live where fear leads. You are not meant to live in hesitation. You are not designed to dwell in doubt. You are a force of will, a being of potential. Your instincts are not lies. They are signals. Your desires are not accidents. They are directives. You must act. You must move. You must become the type of person who does not wait to feel ready, but chooses to move regardless. Because readiness is not a state of preparation. It is a state of decision. You decide you are ready. You decide you will go. And in that decision, fear begins to lose its grip. There is power in urgency. Power in pushing forward when others would pause. Power in momentum that compounds over time. Every bold move you make weakens fear's influence over your mind. Every decisive step strengthens your inner authority. You stop living from reaction and start living from intention. And once you taste that power, once you realize that fear was never as strong as you thought, you become dangerous to the limits that once held you. You move faster, think sharper, choose bolder, and in that rhythm progress becomes natural. Success becomes predictable. Greatness becomes inevitable. So when fear arises, and it will, do not retreat. Lean in. Step forward. Take the action it's trying to talk you out of. Do the thing that makes your heart race. Say the words fear tells you to keep quiet. Build what fear says will fail. The faster you act in the face of fear, the faster fear begins to fade. The stronger you move through it, the weaker it becomes. You are not a servant of fear. You are not a victim of hesitation. You are the master of your mind, and your mind was made for movement. Fear paralyzes action. Progress demands movement. Let that truth guide your every decision from this moment forward. The mind cannot hold fear and faith at the same time. Choose one. One will always push the other out. They cannot coexist. Faith is the fire that drives vision forward. Fear is the water that douces it. The mind must serve one master, and whichever you feed more often becomes dominant. Feed faith and you rise. Feed fear and you retreat. Every thought you entertain strengthens one and weakens the other. You must understand that belief is not just a feeling. It is a choice. You choose to believe in possibility. You choose to believe in power. You choose to believe in power. You choose to believe in yourself even when everything around you screams otherwise. That choice is the weapon that defeats fear before it can speak. You don't wait to feel brave. You choose to trust. You don't wait for all the lights to turn green. You move because you believe the road will open as you go. Fear will give you every reason to doubt yourself. It will remind you of every past failure. Every time you came up short. Every time things didn't go the way you wanted. It knows your history and it tries to use it against you. But faith speaks a different language. It doesn't dwell in what was. It declares what will be. It sees through the fog. It hears possibility where fear hears danger. Or faith says go anyway. Faith says move now. Faith doesn't need proof to act. It needs vision and decision. That is the dividing line. Fear waits for evidence. Faith creates it. Fear wants certainty. Faith works with risk. Fear demands a guarantee. Faith only requires a reason. And if you are breathing, if you are standing, if your dream is still burning even slightly in your heart, that is reason enough. You can't make real progress while entertaining both voices. One voice will demand comfort and the other will demand courage. One will build walls around you, the other will break them down. You cannot run toward your destiny while dragging the chains of fear behind you. At some point you must choose which voice leads, and that choice must be made every day. You choose it in how you wake up. You choose it in how you think. You choose it in what you say to yourself when no one else is listening. That internal dialogue shapes your reality more than any external event ever could. If the voice in your mind is filled with fear, your life will shrink. If that voice is filled with faith, your life will expand beyond what you thought possible. When you look at those who accomplish greatness, understand this. They were not absent of fear. They were full of faith. They knew the cost of standing still was greater than the cost of failing forward. They didn't let fear write the script. They held their mind on the outcome, not the obstacles. They spoke belief until belief became real. You will never move mountains by calculating the weight of every rock. You move mountains by believing they can be moved and beginning the dig. Faith starts before the first result shows. It leads the way. It speaks life into dry places. It gives power to steps that fear would never take. And every time you act from faith, your inner world expands. You see further. You hear clearer. You become someone stronger than you were before. Fear is a thief. It robs the present by magnifying the worst possible future. It convinces you to pause, to delay, to play small. It sounds rational. It sounds like protection, but it is poison. It slowly drains your will, your energy, your vision. You wake up years later wondering what happened to your fire. The fire didn't leave. You just stopped feeding it. You gave fear a seat at the table and it took over. But the good news is this: it only takes one act of boldness to shift the tide. One decision, one risk, one moment of faith so strong that fear can't breathe. And when you do that consistently, fear learns it has no power here. Your mind becomes a sanctuary of strength. Not a chamber of hesitation. Guards your thoughts with discipline. You cannot afford to let fear camp in your mind unchecked. Replace it daily with truth. Replace it with action. Replace it with affirmations that lift you, not limits that bind you. You are capable. You are ready. You are built for the climb. Fear will say you aren't enough. Faith will remind you that enough is not required, only progress. And as long as you keep showing up, as long as you keep taking steps, you cannot be stopped. Your path will clear as your courage builds. Your future will rise as your fear falls. But it begins in the mind. The battle is won there long before it is won in the world. Control that space and you control your life. Let others be ruled by fear if they choose. Let them wait for everything to be safe before they move. That is not your path. You are here to rise, to lead, to build, to do what others are afraid to even imagine. You must be the example. You must be the voice of belief in a world drowning in doubt. You must hold faith even when results are missing, because faith doesn't follow results. It creates them. Faith steps when the outcome is unclear. Faith speaks when fear is screaming. Faith stands when the world wants to kneel. And that is your role. That is your identity. That is your power. Fear and faith cannot live in the same mind. One will always win. Choose your master daily. Choose your future by choosing your thoughts. Choose the voice that lifts you, not the one that locks you down. Choose faith and you will go further than fear ever wanted you to see. Every fear is a lie told by comfort and doubt. It is not a reflection of reality. It is a projection of limitation. Fear dresses itself in logic and concern, but underneath it is nothing more than a desperate attempt to keep you from evolving. It speaks the language of safety, but its intention is control. It tells you to slow down, to shrink, to stay within what is known. And if you listen, you begin to build your life around the boundaries fear creates. But those boundaries were never real. They were invented by comfort and enforced by hesitation. Comfort whispers, why risk it? Doubt adds, what if it doesn't work? Together they plant fear like a seed in the mind. And if you water it with inaction, it becomes a forest of limitation that blocks all light and movement. Fear does not show up when you're doing nothing. It only appears when you dare to stretch beyond what you've already mastered. That's how you know you're growing. The moment fear enters your thoughts, understand it as confirmation that you're stepping into territory your old self never dared to walk. That fear isn't truth. It's the noise of your past trying to stop your future. It's the old identity trying to survive while the new one begins to emerge. Fear is not a warning, it's a test. And those who pass are the ones who take action despite the noise. They do not wait for fear to leave. They move while it screams. And in doing so they prove that fear had no strength but what they gave it. Every time you accept the lie that fear presents, You trade possibility for predictability. You trade the unknown that holds your greatness for the known that holds your excuses. You settle for surviving when you were born for more. But the lie feels comfortable. It feels safe. That's why most people buy it. They would rather live with the illusion of safety than the reality of risk. They would rather sit in quiet desperation than rise in noisy curves. But understand this. Every comfort you protect that's rooted in fear becomes a chain around your progress. The things you avoid are the very things that hold your power. The challenges you delay are the exact doors to your transformation. What you fear the most is usually the path you must walk to become the person you are meant to be. You cannot lead a bold life while obeying the whispers of fear. You cannot build a legacy while living inside the walls that doubt constructs. You must become ruthless in your pursuit of truth. And the truth is simple. Fear is false. It's a distortion. It takes worst-case scenarios and presents them as likely outcomes. It turns possibility into paralysis, and it does this only to keep you comfortable, not fulfilled. That is the trap. Most will never leave the trap because it's padded with routine and decorated with distractions. But comfort is a slow killer. It numbs your edge. It dulls your instincts. It tells you that tomorrow is a better time to start. But tomorrow is where fear sends your dreams to die quietly. The ones who rise to power are not absent of fear. They are immune to its lies. They recognize it instantly and reject its voice. They hear the doubt and they speak certainty. They see the risk and they lean into it. They don't seek comfort. They seek challenge because challenge sharpens them. They don't need a guarantee. They only need a reason. And that reason is enough to silence the lies. They understand that fear is a compass. Whatever it points away from, they move toward. Because on the other side of that fear is freedom. On the other side is power. On the other side is the version of you that is unrecognizable to the version that stays stuck. Every great leap forward begins with confronting a lie that fear tried to sell. You are not too late. You are not too small. You are not underqualified. You are not the exception to success. Those are lies. Lies that sound like truth because they echo your doubts. But your doubt is not a prophecy. It's just a habit. And habits can be broken. Patterns can be shattered. You can rise the moment you stop negotiating with fear. You don't owe fear an explanation. You don't need fear's approval to move. You only need the strength to act, the discipline to commit, and the resolve to never let the lie go unchallenged again. Fear will always return, but each time you face it, it loses a piece of its power. Each time you move anyway, you train your mind to choose courage over comfort. Each time you act, you build a new truth that replaces the old lie. This is how leaders are made. Not in grand moments but in daily decisions to believe what is possible more than what is familiar. You must guard your vision from fear like you would guard your life because your vision is your life. And if fear writes your script, your story will be nothing but chapters of regret and missed chances. Refuse to let lies decide your future. Refuse to let comfort define your capacity. Refuse to let doubt write your destiny. You are not here to live small. You are not here to be hidden. You are not here to be ruled by fear. You are here to rise, to stretch, to break through. You are here to walk through fire and come out stronger. You are here to silence the lies of fear with the truth of action. Every fear is a lie told by comfort and doubt. Don't argue with it. Don't analyze it. Just prove it wrong. Progress requires decisions made in the face of uncertainty. Not when the path is clear. Not when all the answers are known. But when the outcome is unknown and the risks are real. That's where growth happens. That's where transformation begins. The people who move the world forward are not those who waited for clarity. They are the ones who acted with conviction when clarity was nowhere in sight. They didn't have a guarantee. They had resolve. They didn't have security. They had belief. Every breakthrough, every shift, every elevation comes from a moment when someone stood at the edge of the unknown and said, "I'll go anyway." If you wait until you're ready, you'll wait forever. If you wait until every question has an answer, you'll never begin. The ones who lead, who build, who rise are the ones who make decisions in the dark and trust themselves to handle the light when it comes. They don't need a perfect plan. They need a powerful decision. That decision creates momentum. That momentum builds confidence, and that confidence breeds results. You cannot create anything great while standing still in fear. Progress only responds to movement, and movement requires decisions. Indecision is the enemy of progress. It pretends to be caution, but it's really avoidance. It disguises itself as planning, but it's really fear wearing a mask. You will never find a version of your future that doesn't include uncertainty. It's the price of growth. It's the toll you pay at the gate of change. Every level you want to reach will require you to step into the unknown. That's not a problem. That's the process. That's the fire that forges the strong. Those who avoid uncertainty remain bound to the predictable. They live in the cycle of the familiar, wondering why their life never changes. but predictable comfort will never give birth to exceptional outcomes. At some point you have to choose progress over safety. You have to choose purpose over protection. You have to choose forward over familiar. Stop trying to eliminate risk. Start increasing your tolerance for it. Because everything you want sits on the other side of a decision that feels uncomfortable. That's why most people don't reach it. Not because they don't want it, but because they can't make peace with the process. They want results without resistance. They want reward without risk. But that equation doesn't exist. The moment you decide to move forward despite not knowing all the steps, you separate yourself from the crowd. That decision carries weight. It signals to your mind that you are in control, not your fear. And every time you repeat that pattern, you build a life that is unshakable. The difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck is not talent. It's the courage to choose under pressure. The courage to say yes before the map is complete. The courage to start even when failure feels likely. Because failure is not the enemy. Inaction is. Failure teaches, corrects, refines. Inaction only preserves the life you say you no longer want. If you are going to grow, you must become the kind of person who decides quickly and commits fully. No more waiting for signs. No more asking for permission. No more collecting opinions from people who aren't building what you are building. Make the call. Take the shot. Move the needle. Understand this. Hesitation is expensive. It costs time. It costs opportunity. It costs alignment. Every time you delay a decision that your gut is begging you to make, you distance yourself from the life you claim to want. You water down your momentum. You dilute your clarity. But the moment you decide and act, doors open. Not because the world suddenly changes, but because you've aligned your energy with progress. You've stopped negotiating with fear and started living by faith. And when you operate from that space, you become a magnet for solutions. Resources appear. People align. Circumstances shift. But only after you choose. Train your mind to find strength in the unknown. Learn to love the tension of uncertainty. Because that tension is the space where all power is born. That tension is proof that you are on the edge of something significant. Let it fuel you. Let it sharpen you. Let it remind you that the old version of you didn't have the strength to stand in this moment. But you do. You are ready. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've decided that progress matters more than comfort. And once you decide that everything changes, you don't wait for certainty. You create certainty by what you do next. Decide now that your future deserves your courage. Decide that your vision deserves more than your fear. Decide that your purpose is more valuable than your excuses. Progress doesn't wait. Opportunity doesn't pause. The clock is always ticking and only the bold will move with it. The question is not whether uncertainty will be there. It always will. The question is whether you'll let it define you or drive you. Whether you'll shrink or stretch. Whether you'll remain or rise. The decision is always yours. And in that decision everything begins to shift. Fear feeds on hesitation. Kill it with swift action. The longer you wait, the louder fear becomes. It grows in the silence between your intention and your movement. Every second you hesitate, fear gathers more power, builds more arguments, and tightens its grip. It convinces you that now is not the time, that you need more preparation, that you need more certainty. But these are lies designed to paralyze. Fear is not brave. It is a coward that thrives only when you stop moving. The moment you act, it begins to crumble. Action breaks fear's rhythm. It disrupts its influence. It tells your mind and body that you are not owned by it. The cure for fear is not overthinking. The cure is movement. The decision to act, even if your hands are shaking, is what breaks the spell. Those who achieve the extraordinary are not fearless. They are decisive. They move when others freeze. They do not give fear time to multiply. They recognize that hesitation gives fear oxygen and action suffocates it. So they act fast. They speak when their voice trembles. They leap while their legs are unsure. And because of that they gain strength. They develop momentum. They prove to themselves that fear was never real. It was only a delay mechanism, a smokescreen. You gain confidence not by talking about doing but by doing. You become unstoppable by moving through the very thing that said you couldn't. That's where your edge is built, in motion, not in waiting. Hesitation is a decision to stay stuck, to stay safe, to stay small. It never feels like surrender, but that's exactly what it becomes. The dreamer hesitates, the doer advances, and the doer wins. The ones who rise are the ones who don't give fear a seat at the table. They hear it, feel it, but they don't negotiate with it. They move anyway. That movement sends a message to every part of their being. I am in control. I am not a victim of fear. I am its master. And once your mind believes that, fear becomes irrelevant. It may still visit, but it never stays. It may still whisper, but it no longer commands. Fear wants time. It needs delay to gain strength. That's why swift action is its worst enemy. You must train yourself to respond with movement, Not to wait until you feel ready, but to decide that readiness is built in the process, not before it. Every great leader, every great innovator, every great success story is a tale of quick decisions and bold moves in uncertain moments. They didn't wait to feel fearless. They acted before fear had time to settle in. That is your power. That is the skill you must master. Because the person who moves first wins. The person who steps forward when others step back leads. The person who acts while others hesitate breaks barriers. The hesitant will never reach. You must become a weapon against hesitation. You must rewire your mind to treat fear as a signal, not for stopping but for sprinting. The moment you feel it, move, do the thing, make the call, take the step, speak the truth, break the pattern. That's how you create freedom. That's how you condition your mind to respond with power instead of pause. The longer you wait, the heavier the decision becomes. But if you move immediately, the fear has no soil to take root in. You starve it, you remove its foundation, and in its place, confidence grows. Don't confuse stillness with strength. Stillness that comes from clarity is powerful, but stillness born from fear is poison. You know the difference. You feel it in your gut. One feels like peace, the other like pressure. You must trust that instinct. You must develop the discipline to act when your body wants to freeze. That's the path of warriors. That's the path of builders. That's the path of those who refuse to be ruled by hesitation. Every time you act in the face of fear, you gain an inch of freedom, and enough inches stacked together becomes momentum that fear can no longer touch. Think about every regret you've had. Almost all of them are tied to a moment where you knew what to do but didn't move fast enough. You gave fear a voice and it used it well. You gave it a seat and it took control. But you can reverse that trend right now with one decision, one action, one defiant moment where you say no more. From this point forward, fear gets no time, no pause, no hesitation, just action. Immediate, unapologetic, courageous action. That's the new standard. That's the new operating system. The one where doubt loses every battle because it never gets time to gather its army. You weren't born to be timid. You weren't born to live slow, think small, and wait for guarantees. You were born to move with force, to act with power, to lead with urgency. Fear feeds on hesitation, but you've already decided that hesitation is not your language. You speak in movement, you speak in momentum, you speak in boldness, and when you do, fear loses its grip, loses its edge, loses its place. Every time you act fast, you prove to yourself that you are in charge, not the fear. So act now, speak now, build now, move now. Let fear watch you rise while it fades into silence. The successful person feels fear but does not obey it. Fear is not absent in their journey. It walks beside them. It whispers doubt, projects failure, and paints visions of catastrophe. But they move anyway. They hear the voice but deny it authority. They feel the sensation but never surrender the decision. Success is not the elimination of fear. It is the mastery over it. It is the mastery over it. It is the decision to act not because there is no fear, but because the mission matters more than the emotion. Fear will scream stop. Fear will shout wait. Fear will beg don't risk it. But the successful person has trained their mind to interpret those screams as signals of alignment. They don't run from fear. They walk through it with their eyes open and their mind locked on the goal. Every person who ever built something great had fear in their mind, but they refused to let it live in their hands. They moved anyway. They made the call. They invested the time. They stood on the stage. They launched the idea. And when fear said, "You're not ready," they responded with action. Because fear is never accurate. It is exaggerated imagination, not fact. It predicts the worst, ignores the best, and fixates on the unknown. But the unknown is where all potential lives. So the successful don't run from it. They embrace it. They have trained themselves to get comfortable being uncomfortable, not by reading, not by hoping, but by moving in the middle of the storm. Obedience to fear is permission for failure. It is surrender in disguise. It dresses itself as wisdom, but it is weakness wearing a mask. The moment you obey fear, you hand it the pen and let it rewrite your story. And fear will always write you out of your dreams. It will write a plot of hesitation, procrastination and excuses. But the successful person writes with boldness. They do not erase fear. They override it. They move forward, with fear present but powerless. They understand that the more they move, the more fear loses credibility. The voice gets weaker. The noise gets quieter. Not because fear is gone, but because courage has taken control. Fear can only grow in the absence of action. When you pause, fear speaks louder. When you hesitate, fear sharpens its claws. But when you move, it breaks. Its lies unravel. Its illusions are shattered. The successful understand this. so they build momentum quickly. They do not wait for perfect timing. They do not wait for the vanishing of fear. They move with it on their back and in their mind, but never in their decisions. Action is their weapon. Progress is their answer. Movement is their mindset. They win not by being fearless, but by being relentless. It's easy to admire the confident, the bold, the powerful, but every one of them was once standing at the edge of fear. They just made a different choice. They chose the mission over the emotion. They chose the vision over the voice. They chose to believe in the possibility more than the problem. That choice repeated became a pattern, and that pattern became identity. You don't become successful by avoiding fear. You become successful by acting through it so consistently that your identity no longer depends on emotion but on decision. Your fear is not special. Your fear is not unique. Every person who has done what you want to do has felt the same fear. The only difference is what they did with it. They didn't seek to eliminate it. They decided to dominate it. They knew fear would try to anchor them, so they cut the rope. They didn't try to calm every emotion. They trained themselves to trust their discipline more than their doubts. That is what separates the average from the exceptional. Not luck, not talent, not perfect timing, just the decision to move while afraid, again and again until fear becomes background noise. If you obey fear, you live a life of almost started, almost finished, almost believed, almost made it. That's not your story. That's not your legacy. You weren't born to obey fear. You were born to conquer it. You were built to stand tall in its face and move anyway. You were built to silence the voice through execution, not through negotiation. There is no need to debate fear. Just act. Let your results be your rebuttal. Let your movement be your answer. Let your life become a monument to the truth that fear was never the master. It was just the obstacle, and you are the one who overcame it. The ones who win in this world are not those who feel nothing. They are those who refuse to be controlled by what they feel. They are not immune to fear. They are immune to its influence. They feel the pressure and they push forward. They feel the anxiety and they lean in. They feel the doubt and they answer it with decisions. That is power. That is mastery. That is the truth behind every success you admire. Not perfection, not ease, but grit in the middle of tension, resolve in the middle of resistance, movement in the middle of fear, and that power is already in you. You don't need more time. You don't need more certainty. You don't need more permission. You need one thing, the decision to no longer obey fear, to hear it, feel it, acknowledge it, but never bow to it. Let your actions speak louder than the fear in your head. Let your moves be faster than the doubt that follows. Let your decisions become declarations that say, I own this life, not fear. The successful feel fear, but they never obey it. Now neither will you. You grow stronger each time you confront what you once avoided. Every challenge you face, every fear you stand up to adds another layer to your strength. Growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from pressure. Power is not inherited. It's built through battle. The things you avoid do not disappear. They wait. They sit in the shadows of your life, draining your energy, quietly limiting your potential. But the moment you turn toward them, face them, walk into them, you begin to take your life back. It's not about being unafraid. It's about being unwilling to stay weak. And strength is born the moment you say, I will not avoid this anymore. Avoidance is a liar. It tells you that delay is safety. It whispers that tomorrow will be a better day to deal with it. But avoidance only guarantees one thing, stagnation. What you refuse to confront will always control you. It will shape your thoughts, guide your actions, and fence in your potential. But when you confront it, you shrink its power. The monster is never as big as it looks when you turn and face it. The wall is never as high when you start to climb. The pain is never as sharp once you commit to move through it. The only way out is through, and each time you walk through, you walk out stronger. Strength is not some mystical trait given to a chosen few. It is forged in confrontation. You get stronger not by watching, not by thinking, but by facing the fear, facing the failure, facing the hard conversations, the buried regrets, the overdue changes. Every time you move toward what you used to avoid, your threshold expands, your confidence multiplies. You start to realize that what once felt impossible is just another thing you've now mastered. The things that made you feel weak yesterday become your proof of power tomorrow. That's how transformation works, through repetition, through friction, through courage. When it would be easier to retreat, avoidance keeps you in cycles. It convinces you that you're not ready, that you'll do it later, that something else needs to happen first. But those are illusions. The more you avoid, the more you believe the lie. and soon you're surrounded by limits that were never real, only repeated. But the moment you confront the thing you've been running from, the cycle ends. You reclaim your authority. You break patterns. You gain ground. You don't need perfect conditions. You need the guts to say, "This stops now." That is the language of the strong. Not excuses, not delays, just confrontation and commitment. The people you admire, the ones who seem unshakable, they didn't get there by avoiding what scared them. They got there by walking directly into it again and again until fear had no say, until avoidance became irrelevant. They weren't born brave. They built it by confronting everything that once made them shrink, and you will too, because the minute you stop running, your real life begins. Not the version ruled by fear, but the one guided by decision. Not the life boxed in by avoidance, but the one expanded by action. Every confrontation is a breakthrough in disguise. Every step toward what you feared is a step into the next version of your strength. There's a reason you feel drained when you avoid something. It's because your energy is being spent maintaining a lie. Avoidance isn't peace. It's pressure disguised as patience. It keeps you alert but not alive, on edge, but not in control. The only way to get your power back is to face the very thing you've been pretending isn't there. That's how you create real confidence, not by avoiding what's uncomfortable, but by walking straight into it and proving to yourself that you're stronger than it. You build evidence, you create a history of courage, and that becomes a mindset. No fear can break. You won't conquer everything in a day, but you must conquer something today. Choose one thing you've been avoiding, the conversation, the decision, the step. Face it with everything you've got, not perfectly, not without fear, just completely. That's where the shift happens, not in the absence of fear, but in the refusal to let fear win. That's how strength is built, by being the kind of person who confronts what others hide from again and again, until the hard things become normal, and the old you becomes unrecognizable. That is growth. That is how legends are made. The pain of confrontation is always less than the cost of avoidance. What hurts in the moment strengthens you forever. What you avoid today will own you tomorrow. But what you confront today will empower you for a lifetime. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to take the first step toward what you've been avoiding. Face it head on. Lean into it. And realize that on the other side of fear is freedom. On the other side of resistance is revelation. On the other side of avoidance is the strength you've been chasing all along. So the next time fear tells you to turn back, remember this. Every time you confront what you once avoided, you don't just grow stronger, you become unstoppable. You train your mind to respond with courage. You build a life where nothing has the power to hold you back unless you let it. You walk differently. You think differently. You lead differently. Because you've been through fire, and chose to keep walking. And when you live like that, there is nothing that fear or avoidance can do to stop you. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it in pursuit of purpose. Fear will always exist when the stakes are real, when the goal is high, when the mission is meaningful. But courage steps forward anyway. It doesn't wait for fear to vanish. It takes command despite it. The courageous don't seek comfort. They seek clarity. They understand that fear is not the enemy. Surrender to fear is. The true test is not whether fear arises, but whether you let it dictate your path. Fear may stand at the door, but purpose kicks it open. The fire in your mission must burn hotter than the chill of your fear, and when it does, nothing can hold you back. The person with courage doesn't silence fear. They outwork it. They outwalk it. They stay committed to the goal regardless of how loud fear screams. They have trained their mind to respond to fear not with retreat, but with resolve. Because every meaningful pursuit comes with resistance. The moment you choose growth, fear will try to interfere. The moment you raise your standard, fear will remind you of your failures. But courage responds with action, not with justification, not with negotiation, just motion in the direction of the dream. That is how the courageous win, not by being immune to fear, but by being immune to its control. Fear is not a stop sign, it's a signal that you are touching something that matters, that you are moving into territory where growth lives. Courage recognizes that signal, and chooses to continue. It does not wait for the path to become easy. It does not wait for every step to be certain. It steps forward into the unknown, because what lies ahead matters more than the emotion of the moment. That's how you know you are in alignment. When you can feel fear but are still willing to act. When your mission means more than your mood. When your values speak louder than your doubts. You cannot live a life of impact and avoid fear at the same time. Purpose will always come with pressure. Vision will always come with vulnerability. The dream will always demand more of you than the fear allows. So you must decide, will you be led by fear, or will you lead in spite of it? Every great leader, every great builder, every great innovator has felt fear, but they kept going. They stayed the course. They reminded themselves that fear has no say in a life of intention, that progress belongs to the bold, that mastery is earned in motion, not in waiting. Courage does not ask for permission from fear, it commands its own direction. The mind will always try to protect you from pain, that is its job. But you were not born to live in a cage of safety. You were born to move mountains, to shape reality, to fulfill purpose. That means you must often override the mind. You must recondition it to understand that discomfort is not danger, that fear is not fact, that risk is not failure. Courage trains the mind to trust action more than anxiety. It tells the body we move forward not because we're fearless, but because we are committed. That is where transformation begins. The mastery of fear is not emotional denial, it is disciplined action. Too many people wait to feel ready. They wait for fear to subside before they move, and that day never comes. Or so years pass, dreams die, purpose rots in potential, but not for you. You understand that courage is a skill, not a feeling. It is built every time you take a step when your legs are shaking, every time you speak truth, when your voice trembles, every time you say yes to a calling that feels too big for your current level of comfort. That's where the edge is built. That's where the identity of a leader is formed. One courageous act at a time, repeated until the habit becomes character. When purpose becomes your priority, fear becomes irrelevant, not non-existent, but powerless. It may still knock, but you don't answer. It may still whisper, but you don't listen, because your direction is set, your reason is too strong, your conviction too loud. This is the mindset of champions. They don't move based on comfort, they move based on calling. They rise early, act boldly, and commit fully. They know fear can visit, but it cannot stay, because courage lives here now, and courage doesn't flinch, it doesn't fold, it doesn't flee, it builds, it leads, it executes. The longer you live for safety, the further you drift from your purpose. But when you choose courage, real courage, you begin to move in alignment with your destiny. You gain momentum, you start stacking evidence that you are stronger than your emotions, that you are capable of standing in the storm without bending, that your mission is not just an idea, it's a fire, and fire doesn't shrink when fear shows up. It blazes hotter, it consumes the depth. That is what purpose does to fear, it burns through it, and courage is the spark. So no, you do not need to be fearless, you just need to be ready to master fear, to feel it, but not follow it, to walk through it, because something bigger is pulling you forward. That something is your purpose. It is louder than the lies, stronger than the doubt, more permanent than the feeling. And when you decide that nothing matters more than that purpose, fear has no choice but to step aside, because courage has taken over, and nothing stands in the way of a mind on fire with intention. So now you know fear is not your master unless you make it one. It will speak but it cannot decide. It will appear but it cannot. But it cannot move you because the power is always yours. You have a mission, a calling, a reason to run. Nothing is more important than fulfilling that. Courage is not about how you feel, it's about what you choose. Every time you confront fear, every time you act in spite of it, you run, you become more, you break limits, you silence doubt. This is your edge, this is your weapon, and from this moment on, you do not flee, you do not retreat, you do not wait, you lead. You act, you dominate. Fear will exist, but it will never rule again, because now you have and that mastery will take you wherever you choose to go.